This show contains movie spoilers and swearing. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bitesize Cinema. I'm your host RJ McCready, and for this episode I'm going to be taking you guys back to a year in 2011 to look at Jake Gyllenhaal's action-adventure sci-fi movie Source Code. So let's jump on the train, let's play you guys a trailer, and I'll see you soon.
At 7:48 this morning, a bomb exploded on a train outside of Chicago, killing everyone on board.
What is my mission?
A secret program called the Source Code will send you back in time to relive the last 8 minutes of a passenger's life on that train. Find the bomb, and you'll find the bomber.
What would you do if you knew you had less than 8 minutes to live?
I'd make those seconds count.
Welcome back, Captain.
I was unable to find the bomber.
We've been informed there'll be another attack in 6 hours. If you find the bomber, the next attack can be prevented. As always, you will have 8 minutes.
It's the same train, but it's different.
You're kind of freaking me out.
I want to go back in. I'm gonna save her.
You can't. Doesn't work that way.
Christina is dead.
Try and stop me.
Sean!
Get back!
Source code.
And welcome back, guys. So the synopsis of this movie is a soldier wakes up in someone else's body and discovers he is part of an experimental government program to find the bomber of a commuter train within 8 minutes. It's a PG-13, it's got a nice 3-minute runtime, it's an action, drama, mystery, sci-fi, pretty much everything's thrown into this movie. It's got 7.5 on my IMDb, which is very good. I think it really deserves that because it's a good movie. It's got a budget, well, it had a budget of $31 million, and it took $150 million at the box office, which was really good. It was directed by an English director called Duncan Jones, and I didn't know this. Duncan Jones is actually the son of David Bowie. Dance, magic, dance, magic, dance. Always reminds me of Labyrinth. Every time I think of David Bowie, I think of Labyrinth. But that's not a bad thing because that's another good movie. But we're not talking about Labyrinth today. We're talking about this sci-fi movie. But yeah, so it's the other thing about this film I was surprised with. There was no sort of big distributor. I thought it'd be like sort of like 20th Century Fox or Universal or something like that. Is that in actual fact, it's kind of like a borderline independent film company called Summit Entertainment. I always like to shout those types of companies out. They did really well in 2008. They basically put together the Twilight saga, made a whole ton of money. Then they did a Nicolas Cage movie called The Knowing, which made a load of money as well. So it's kind of sort of catapulted them into making this really good movie, which I'm talking about today. So, and what I was really surprised with was that I was really expecting this movie to be like a short story from some 1930s comic book or something like that, because it kind of like shouts at you, know what I mean, a bit like the Twilight Zone or something. It reminds me of that type of sort of concept, but in actual fact it was actually written by an American screenwriter called Ben Ripley, and you know, he's done some work here and there, and he had this script flying around and he was trying to sort of get it, you know, produced, and looking online, it looks like he met Jake Gyllenhaal, and Jake Gyllenhaal managed to get it produced, and then he met Duncan Jones, and then from there onwards this film got produced, which is kind of cool. So that's like your main building block, and then you've got the music, which I always like to shout out because music is always important to a movie, and it's a guy called Chris Bacon. And he, funny enough, did the music to Bates Motel, which is the TV show of Psycho. And that also started Vera Farmiga, who plays Colleen Goldwyn in this movie. So there's a little bit of a tie in there. Let's talk about the rest of the cast. So obviously you got Jake Gyllenhaal. Does a fantastic job in this movie. I must admit, kind of makes me want to go and buy a tweed jacket after watching this movie. He kind of pulls it off pretty well wearing that in this film. He's a great actor. He started off with Donnie Darko, and he's recently done the Spider-Man movie, playing one of the little spoiler here, playing the bad guy Mysterio. Michelle Monaghan, she started off in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and she did the romantic comedy Maid of Honor. And you got Jeffrey Wright. He's really good. He's a very, always comes across as a real sort of intelligent type actor. He plays Dr. Rutledge in this. I remember him in James Bond playing Felix in the Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, and then his latest outing is playing Commissioner Gordon in the Batman movie. Look forward to that. So there's some of the cast. You also got some of the American listeners here probably recognise this guy, Russell Peters, as a stand-up comedian. So he has like a cameo in this film as well. There's a cast. A little bit of trivia. The film is set in Chicago, but it's actually filmed in Canada. I've got to shout this one out. There's the ringtone. Christina's ringtone in this film is Chesney Hawkes, I Am the One and Only. There you go. Being a bit of an 80s fan myself, got to shout that one out. Also, I mentioned earlier, I will mention this now. So you watch this film, and like I said, I thought it was it was shouting out to me, this is a short story from some old 1930s sci-fi pulp magazine or something like that. Turns out it's not, as I've already mentioned. But the other thing this film shouts out to me is the quantum leap. I'm sure many of you are aware of that, with Sam jumping into different adventures in times. And he's basically jumping into the avatar of someone else's body. And when I watched this film for this review, I thought, yeah, this is definitely got a quantum leap to it, because at the beginning, Colter Stevens looks into a mirror, and that happened in every sort of quantum leap episode. Turns out that is actually got a time, because I never realised this, but Scott Beluga, who plays the character Sam in Quantum Leap, actually has a cameo in this. And he plays Coulter's father, so he is the voice on the other end of the telephone at the end of the movie. And he even goes, or he says, "old boy," down the telephone, so like a little bit of homage there. So I thought that was pretty cool. So it does have that little tie. So there you go, guys, that's the building block. So let's have a look at this movie. Let's do a bite-sized review. So the film starts off with Army pilot Captain Colter Stevens, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and he wakes up on a commuter train right in the middle of a conversation with his friend Christina Warren.
I took your advice. It was very good advice. Sean?
Look, I can see that you think you know me, but I don't know who you are. My name is Captain Colter Stevens.
You're kind of freaking me out.
It turns out that he has jumped into the body of a guy or a teacher called Sean Fentress. But Colter Stevens' last memory was actually being a helicopter pilot in Afghanistan. And the world around him has suddenly changed, and he's a little bit disorientated. He's wondering what the hell is going on. He starts expressing some confusion, and he's walking around, and he's a little bit rude to some people. He's a little bit off in this process, but then 8 minutes later the train blows up and you get this huge explosion. And what I liked about this movie right from this very moment was that when I first watched it, I really felt like I was Colter Stevens, if that makes sense, because you really felt like, as the audience, you was thrown onto that train with him, Because you know, first time watching this movie, you don't know what's going on, and you're looking around, and I almost felt like, well, what would it be like for Coulter Stevens? And I think this is the draw for the movie, because from here onwards, you're trying to think, well, how can I get myself out of this situation? And in the first 8 minutes, you realise that there's a bomb that goes off, and it feels like a mix of, as I mentioned, Quantum Leap meets kind of like the Murder on the Orient Express. And from here onwards, you've now got a mystery, and you've got to try and work things out, which is pretty cool. So, back to the movie. After the explosion, Stevens then wakes up in a dimly lit cockpit, and he's communicating through a video screen with an Air Force captain called Captain Colleen Goodwin.
Welcome back, Captain Stevens.
Where am I? What is the source code?
It's a computer program, Captain.
Who is played by Vera Farmiga, and she basically gives him a rundown of what's going on. She basically says you've got 8 minutes to go back in time, or back into this like virtual simulation, and try and find out who the bomber is. So then Coulter gets zipped back to that same time again. I forgot to mention Groundhog Day as well. This is like Groundhog Day, where he keeps reliving that 8 minutes, and he goes through everything he just went through, but he does things slightly different. He rushes to the toilet. He has a look up in the ceiling, and then he finds the bomb.
No.
But now he's found the bomb, he now needs to find the bomber in order to be able to deactivate it. And before this happens, the bomb explodes, and then he's back into that groundhog situation again. He wakes up in the capsule, and this time he's a little bit more demanding in what's going on.
At 7:48 this morning, a bomb exploded on a train outside of Chicago, killing everyone on board.
And this time he is fed a little bit more information from the captain, and she basically tells him that the train has already exploded. The situation that you keep going back to has already happened. What we want you to do is go back and try and find out who the bomber is, so we can prevent more attacks from happening. So he goes back, he manages to locate a possible suspect, and this is where things change a little bit, because he now gets off the train, he follows the suspect, he intervenes a little bit, you get an action scene here, get him rolling around on the floor. The train explodes, and in order for the bomb to activate, it has to be done by a telephone, but this guy is rolling around with, he doesn't activate his telephone. So he has this process of elimination. But as it turns out, the train's exploded, but he hasn't gone back to the cockpit. He's extended those 8 minutes. But then he falls onto the train track, and again, this is where it kind of gets a little bit Groundhog Day. He gets run over by a train, and then he goes back to the cockpit. But what's different this time on his return is that he's worked out that he can actually save Christina. He managed to get off the train, and he managed to extend that 8 minutes. So this is where he's starting to work things out. Although he's being told it's just like some sort of like virtual reality device that very cleverly reconstructs the last 8 minutes of the people who actually got killed in this attack. Coulter then learns through the captain that he is actually a pilot who got killed in Afghanistan 2 months ago, and he's actually on a life support machine with most of his limbs all severed. And they've basically reconstructed his body in this capsule so he can kind of make sense of things, and they're using his mind to transport him back in these 8 minutes. Whilst having this conversation in the capsule, he manages to speak to Dr. Rutledge, which is played by Jeffrey Wright, and he is basically the brains behind the source code. He has put this together. And Coulter says to him, look, I will carry this mission out. I'm not best pleased with it, but once I have come to the end of this mission, all I ask is that you turn off the life support machine. To which Dr. Rutledge agrees. Coulter then goes back, he keeps repeating the last 8 minutes, and after several attempts he manages to find a terrorist named Derek Frost, and he memorises his licence and vehicle and registration plates, because he follows him off the train. He finds out that he's got a van loaded up with a nuclear device, He intervenes with him and he calls the police. He gets the guy arrested, and then, as it turns out, through this process of him carrying this action out within, I guess you could say, like the source code environment, he comes back and then he relays this information, and what happens here is that the actual source code has worked. They've managed to prevent the terrorists from doing the other attacks, and then Dr. Cutledge is congratulated, and he's come away and he's gone, I knew this would work. But now Stevens is going to be terminated, but at this point Coulter has worked out that there's possibly many other alternate universes out there, and he does mention this to Christina on the train before this. He actually says to her, what if you were in another reality, you might have a conversation about her boyfriend, and he says to her, look, you know, what if you ditched your boyfriend and you did something else in another life?
What would you do if you knew you had less than 8 minutes to live?
I'd make those seconds count.
And I think what Coulter Stevens is beginning to work out now is that in the source code it's becoming like another reality, so he could possibly change things and then continue this life. And this is where the film all becomes a little bit sort of sci-fi and alternative reality, which is very clever.
I want to go back in. I'm going to save her.
You can't. Doesn't work that way.
Christina is dead.
She doesn't have to be.
So at this point the film's kind of like taking a very clever turn, because Coulter is now, he's found out who the terrorist is, he's saved the day, he's prevented the terrorist attack, but now it's become a mission to save himself, because back in the real world for him, he is dying, he's in he's on a life support machine, but now he's thinking there might be a chance for me to live, to jump into this alternate reality and then try and make a life with Christina, because there's obviously some chemistry between them. So it's kind of like become like a sort of love story with the sci-fi elements. So back in the capsule, just before his life support machine is turned off, he says to Captain Goodwin, he explains all this and he says, look, just give me another 8 minutes, just send me back into the source code, and after that 8 minutes then turn off my life support machine, just give me this charm.
I'm asking you to have the decency to let me...
You're kind of like on the edge of his seat because you want this to happen for him, and he is sent back one last time, and then he goes through all the events that he went through. He wakes up on the train, he sets a date with Christina, he manages to defuse the bomb, he apprehends the terrorist guy, reports him to the police, and then there's a nice scene here where he makes a telephone call to his dad, which turns out to be Scott Beluga from Quantum Leap. It's not actually Scott Beluga, but you know what I mean, it's the guy who plays him, and it's a nice little time with, as I said earlier, the Quantum Leap. And he basically guises himself on this telephone call saying he was a friend of Coulter Stevens, and I just wanted to talk to you. And it's it's quite a nice moment in the movie. And he also sends an email to Captain Goodwin just to tell her about the source code, which I'll mention a little bit later on. And then after 8 minutes, Goodwin terminates Stevens' life support machine right at the point where he's about to kiss Christina, and as it turns out, he remains in this world, and it confirms his theory that source code is not just a simulation, it's actually a machine that creates an alternate reality. And because of his last actions in this last 8 minutes, he's actually caused all the realities to kind of align, and he's actually prevented the train from actually blowing up. And back in the time capsule world, or in the source code world, the train hasn't actually blown up, and Dr. Rutledge is now left saying, oh, maybe one day my machine will work. So things have changed for him as well. What's clever is the email that Coulter sent to the captain has come through, and she reads it, and then she's surprised to sort of read it, and it's saying, the source code works, continue doing it. You have changed the future, and they've also created an alternate reality version of him, which then goes back to Coulter and Christina. They're back in this sort of alternate reality, and it kind of ends the way it started. So at the beginning you see Coulter looking into a mirror, which is very much like the quantum leap thing, and then at the end he looks into a mirror sphere. It must be some artwork in Chicago or something like that, and he sees a reflection of himself, and he's not Coulter, but he's the other guy. He is actually Sean Fentress. So there you go, that's it, and then that's the way the film closes, and he I presume he goes to live a happy life in this alternate reality. But closing scene kind of suggests a sequel, because in the other reality, in the source code world, Coulter Stevens' life support machine is still on. It's kind of like they're insinuating that they're prepping him up for another mission. So I think there's a sequel in the works. I thought about that when I watched it recently. I just think I'm not sure whether we need a sequel with this movie, because I think it's a good sort of standalone film, and I like the way it leaves you wondering. But we'll wait and see. But there you go. That is Source Code, guys. This is a pretty short review actually, because it's a short movie, and one of the things I like about it really goes at a nice pace. There's a lot packed into it, but it really gets you from A to B very quickly. And the other thing is, it's not a film that's packed with lots and lots of actions or explosions, but there's just enough there to keep it going. And as I said at the beginning of the review, I really like it does feel like a sort of murder mystery type adventure. You know, it's like you do feel like you're with the main character, Coulter Stevens, and you're trying to work stuff out, which is my draw to this film, and that's why I will continue to go back to it. So yes, it's turned into one of my favourite sci-fi mystery adventure flicks. So if you have seen it, let me know. You know, put some comments on the Facebook page. Let us know if you enjoy this movie too. If you haven't seen it, I know if you're listening to this review, I've spoiled it for you, but yeah, go check it out. It's a fun movie. Like I say, it goes at a pace. So there you go. That is Source Code. So before I close the show, a little bit of admin as always. I am a proud member of the Legion Podcast Network, so please go and check out all the other shows on there. The other show including the Mystery Vault podcast, which I produce. Where I talk about all the mysteries around the world. I've just recently spoken about Vampires, which is the new show that's dropped, so go and check that out. I've got a Facebook page where I'm most active, so go and check that out. That's the best place to contact me with if there's any movies you want me to check out, reviews, anything like that. More importantly, you can listen to Bitesize Cinema on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and several other players on the internet. If you put in Bitesize Cinema Podcast in on Google, and if you like to, guys, leave us a review as well. Let me know if I'm doing good, if I'm doing bad. I don't mind. Let me know. No news is bad news, as they say. And what else? Let's talk about what I've got coming up soon. So Dan Bone, my good buddy Dan, my regular co-host, he has recovered from his operation. Sounds like he's doing very well. I think he recorded on his show last night. It sounded like that went okay. So he's back up and running. So hopefully I'll be having him on the show to do the Return of the Jedi episode, which will be a lot of fun. I'm actually getting up to 100 episodes here, guys. I don't actually stamp the show by saying it's episode this and then it's episode that, but I am getting up to number 100, which is a bit of a milestone. And I'm going to be doing Jaws for that episode. I know how to do that film sometime, which is an absolute classic. I don't know anybody that doesn't like that film. So I'll talk about how that terrified me from going into the water all those years ago up until today. And I've also got Armageddon with Kung Fu Dave. We just had a little bit of a delay in the production of that. It's just trying to sort of tie up dates and things like that. But that'll be coming soon. So that's what's in the works. So look out for that. So there you go, guys. Got to close the show. And as always, keep it bite-sized, keep it safe, and I'll see you.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Helming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.